Let me start first with an introduction. My name is Mike Garcia. I'll be moderating the panel today. You may have seen my title on LinkedIn. That is not how I identify myself. I identify myself first as a husband, a father, a basketball coach to both of my boys, an avid but not very good golfer, and a DEI champion. That's something that I really put a lot of energy into. And at work, I serve as Managing Director of Crime Prevention at Charles Schwab. And in today's presentation, as you saw from our flyer, we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of what it means to be successful and finding success and fulfillment. We're going to share our own career journeys, our paths to leadership roles and success, at least as defined by American culture and business culture. We're going to talk about our own personal struggles with finding balance in our lives, managing anxiety, and ultimately pursuing a path to worthiness, which is what we think is the most important thing to do. And then we're going to share some practical tips on finding balance in all of those things, identifying your career goals, but leaving space to find fulfillment beyond your workplace and in your personal life as well. So with that, let me bring in our panelists. Both of these panelists have been very, very successful in their careers, but also are role models in terms of how you find balance and fulfillment in your entire life. And so that's really what I want us to focus on today. And so I'll start first with Shanna. And Shanna, I'll let you introduce yourself to the audience.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Shanna Weber. My pronouns are she, her. I am a diehard baseball mom. I am also the wife to a deadhead. I am a native Coloradan who is a giant foodie and love all different cultures of food. And I'm currently struggling coming to grips with my aging body not allowing me to do all the activities that I want to do. And so that is something I am working through right now mentally, is to let myself age gracefully, but it's not working out so well yet.
I can't relate to the baseball or deadhead stuff, but I can certainly relate to the aging body thing and things just not working like they're supposed to.
Yeah.
Shanna, glad you're here with us. And Samaya, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Sumaya, my pronouns are she, her. I am a Latin dancer. I am a sibling to 9 brothers and sisters. I am a mother to a child with special needs. I'm a Black woman. I am a person living with a disability, actually 2 disabilities. And I'm really happy to be here.
Glad you're here as well, Samaya. And I'm really looking forward to the conversation. We've had a chance to connect prior to this and discuss some of the struggles you've had in your paths, your career journeys, and I think it's really going to resonate with our audience. So excited for the conversation. So I think where we first should start is maybe just a little bit of grounding or a bit of an autopsy of how we, in our culture, in the American culture and business culture, think of success. So Shanna, I think you're driving slides and they're going to bring something up for us to look at. But audience, this is your first chance to participate. So if you haven't already, fire up your chat box. And we want to hear from you. And Shanna, Samaya, if anything jumps out at the chat box, please feel free to opine on it. But to our audience, when you hear the word success, give us kind of your initial reaction to that. What's the first thing you think of? Could be a word, could be a phrase. So go ahead and drop your thoughts in the chat. Money, yeah.
Thanks.
For sure.
Laura, yeah,
Relatable.
Laura, right on.
Yeah, and all the thumbs ups that go with money. Yeah. Career satisfaction, achievement. Okay,
Title.
Todd, I like it. Fulfillment. Todd's ahead of the game. Title, yeah. Yeah. I like balance.
Yeah.
Sophia's ahead of the game too.
Yeah. Stephen, very profound alignment between who you are and what you care about. what you want to do and what you're doing with your time and energy. We probably just need to invite you onto the panel. He pretty much has a workshop, so we're done here.
Yeah, so the textbook definition per Merriam-Webster, there's actually a couple of definitions. The first is satisfactory completion of something, which I find pretty interesting because the word satisfactory is the first thing in there, right? And I don't know that many of us think of it that way, right? It's like, okay, well, I did this thing and it was just okay, right? I completed the task, check the box. I think it's safe to say that in business, generally people don't think of success in that way. They rather the second definition is what we think of, which is it's really about the accumulation of things, right? The other definition is the gaining of wealth, respect, or fame, right? So it's in some of the comments that have been provided. It's what's your title? How big is your team? Where are you in the hierarchy of an organization? What's your paycheck? What are these things that your career has brought to you in your life that you can do? And all of these things, obviously, or maybe not so obviously, it's become obvious to me, require some pretty significant sacrifices, right? If you're always pursuing the next best thing and haven't really found satisfaction in your path, there are things that you have to leave to the side that don't get as much of your energy and focus. And so we really want to dig in on that a little bit more. Shanna's just brought up a slide, which I think is pretty interesting. And the quotes that you see in here are by obviously very successful people, as we've just defined it. And I think these quotes shouldn't be viewed as negative things, but something that should be learned from. And it's interesting to me in the first quote that, what The Rock is saying is like, greatness will come if you continue to pour yourself into your career consistently, then you're going to find greatness. And isn't that a wonderful thing to pursue? Well, maybe, but at what cost is the question that we think we have to be asking. And then the other quote, you can always be better. Well, maybe that's okay to pursue at times, but again, at what cost? So with that level set on how we typically think about success, Shanna, Samaya, I want to bring you back into the conversation. So Shanna, why don't you talk to us about what you think people actually might be looking for beyond this textbook definition of success?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I think there, in the chat, there were words like accomplish, title, the status, money, and this equates to those two quotes about, having greatness and just being better than where you are to be successful. But a lot of the times we're actually looking for something else in our pursuit of success. And so success doesn't equal fulfillment. And fulfillment's definition is the feeling of satisfaction that you get from doing or achieving something, especially something useful. And so a quote there from Tony Robbins, the guru of happiness in life, and says, success without the fulfillment is the ultimate failure. Success also doesn't equal happiness. The success definition of attaining those titles and that fame and that wealth doesn't mean you're going to be happy. And so the happiness definition is the positive evaluation of one's life and accomplishments overall. And so eloquently put by Eleanor Roosevelt, is happiness is not a goal. It is the byproduct of a life well lived. So when we think about why we're doing the things that we're doing in our careers, is it for the success measurement points that we just discussed, or are we actually looking more for that fulfillment or happiness? Michael, I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah. So Shanna, you and Samaya both have had pretty senior level officer roles at publicly traded firms. The big paycheck that comes with it, right? That the prestige, if you want to call it that. The more widely known definition of success. I'm I want you to talk to everybody about what drove you in the early stages of your career to pursue that definition of success.
Yeah, so as a little girl, I used to play the boss. I'd play office. I didn't play a house. I didn't play teacher. I played the boss. And I had a desk. I wore this little outfit that kind of looked like a suit. I had a briefcase. I had a 1980s adding machine with the tape with the roller tape. And I could 10 key before I could type. And so to me as a little girl, I had this very, what I'll call patriarchal view of success. It was, I needed to be a success. I wanted to be a successful businesswoman, which looked like the successful businessmen. And thoughts of being a mom or a nurturer or caretaker weren't even in the picture. I pictured things like risky business, Wall Street, working girl, right? None of them had kids. None of them had a private life. It was all work 100%. And that's what I thought it meant when I was going to be a successful business person.
Yeah. What about you, Samaya? What was your initial view of success? How'd you define it? I think
Hey,
you,
you're on
you may
mute.
have muted you.
Samaya,
Samaya.
you're on mute.
Oh yeah, that would be helpful if I came off of mute. Thank you. Like Shanna, I had dreams of being somebody early on. So to me, that looked like wearing a suit to work. I didn't know what that meant, but it meant I was making some money though. I knew that. And I grew up in Oregon. I was like one of the only Black children in my school. I had a Muslim name. We were poor and I lived on public assistance. And I really watched my mom struggle as a single mother to 5 children and saw all the things that we did not have that other people had. And I wanted that life. I wanted the house. I wanted the car. I wanted everything. And neither of my parents went to college. So I came up with my own belief system on what that was. And I think what's important too is that I wanted to escape poverty, period, plain and simple, right? And not only escape poverty, but also be great. But the irony is that I was a satisfactory student. I had a 2.7 GPA, you know? I didn't dream of being satisfactory, even though it's what my grades said. I dreamed of being great. And that desire and drive really propelled me. And it really was propelled by the chip on my shoulder, you know, being different, having to change myself to fit in environments. And it continues to be a big driver, but it's being reframed and lots of therapy too. So that's kind of where I thought of success as a young person.
Yeah, my initial view is similar to yours. Modest, I'll say a modest upbringing. Always had a roof over our head, always had clothes on my back, always had a meal. But certainly watched my parents struggle at times pretty significantly financially. And I saw the burden that put on them, on their relationship. My mom carried a full-time job for as long as I can remember. My dad worked multiple jobs, sometimes 3 jobs, and somehow found balance in all of that. And I really wondered if I could do that. Like it looked that hard. And I saw others who, like you, Samaya, who had more, and who didn't have to work quite as hard. It didn't appear. And so, like you, I said, I'm going to set a path for myself where I get an education, and then I'm going to get into a company and I'm going to pursue the next thing, right? And that somehow would bring a level of happiness and fulfillment, because to me, financial security was almost everything. And thankfully, I've had some experiences along the way that have reframed what's really important. But that definitely was my initial view as well. So Shanna, back to you. So you start to have a lot of success. You are playing Wall Street in real life. Talk to everybody about how it felt along the way.
We don't want to skirt past the issue that when you set up for a goal and you achieve those goals, there is fulfillment there. There is that moment of I did it. And I remember the first time I went from $80,000 to $125,000 in my pay. And I was very young. I was about 20, 26. And I was like, I am making it. I am successful. Look how much they value me. Look how important I am because they just gave me all this money. And I was like, I'm winning. I'm successful. And then, like a hot second later, it was, oh, but I could maybe go for like the assistant vice president or, assistant vice president. Sorry, vice, uh, yeah, assistant. And so I was like, kept going. And then it was like, then you get to the AVP and then you get more money. And it's like, but it was so much less of a percentage bump that it felt, I think, a little less. And then you keep doing this. And all of a sudden, at some point, it's like diminishing returns. Like you get this big raise, but it's a super small percentage from where you were. You are doing more work than you really want to be doing. And you're at some point, I just feel like I got lost. I was succeeding in the measurement, next level, step up the ladder sense, but I wasn't feeling fulfilled. I wasn't feeling any more valued. It was sort of losing its luster.
So Samaya, Shanna's kind of her climb in the corporate ladder was a little bit more of what you typically hear about, right? Yours was, I think, a pretty interesting story as well, but more of the lattice, I guess if you could call it that.
Yeah.
Yeah, share with everybody. What was your journey
Yeah.
like?
So, in what I know about Shanna too, just she definitely went from one role to the next and up the ladder. I am for those of you who know me, I'm kind of all over the place. I'm like, ooh, new shiny object. I always wanted to climb, but I've definitely gone from like a manager down back to an individual contributor. I've actually taken pay cuts. I've been unemployed and like laid off. And so my trajectory to a VP wasn't just like I went from manager to director to, it was not like that. It was like up and down and over here and change industries. And I have a background in higher education. And then I moved over to like DEI and like, HR stuff. And so, yeah, it's definitely more of a lattice than kind of the corporate ladder. But the irony is that Shannon and I both kind of ended up in the same places around the same times in our lives, even though we had different routes to that. I even tell people that I took off 6 months and like went and lived in Europe at like 30, well past the like, college years, because I just wanted to experience life. So I think what is important about like my personality and just knowing how I am is I'm just a very curious person. And I really spent a lot of my career so ambitious that I got impatient really quickly and I got restless. And I'm like, I'm bored. What's the next thing? And if nobody could give that to me, I'd leave. I'm very resilient, but when things didn't go my way or people didn't see my value, I'm like, peace out. And I don't know if anyone else on this call is like this. Even when organizations ran super ridiculously unorganized, it would irritate me and I would leave. And, at 47, I'm like, oh, every organization is a hot mess in some way. So I went through all that and I still made it to VP. But the wisdom is now coming and I'm like, what are the things I could have done differently? Like I left some jobs and was so impatient that I took a big pay cut or I went down a level because I was just being impatient. And my ambition and just my drive didn't allow me to just sit and be more strategic, if that makes sense. So yeah.
I want to pull on that thread a little bit more because you started to kind of move us into a conversation about things you gave up. So talk about sacrifices along the way. You obviously don't attain these titles and these roles without putting something to the side. So what do you feel like you sacrificed?
Yeah, I sacrificed a lot of things. And again, I didn't know I was doing that then, but as a woman, I really took on characteristically patriarchal kind of notions of how we should behave. And I learned those early on. It's also just a part of who I am, in that I denied emotions. I wouldn't show emotions. I would manage people and be really annoyed when they got emotional. I was curt sometimes. I was not understanding. And I also knew that as a Black person, the further away that I could be from acting Black, the better things would be for me. And I joke around that I have a Oregon accent or a white person's accent, and that really helped me, right? I could have the same level of intelligence, but grow up in like East Oakland, where my family's from, and people wouldn't take me seriously. But because I grew up in an environment where I speak a certain way, it opened up doors for me, right? And I think it's important to also note that me denying, so I'd never talk about race at work. If there was like a shooting or something, I wouldn't say anything. When people talk bad about Black people, I would just be like, yeah, them, you know? And I sacrificed a lot of that because I knew that that would help me. And we don't often think about those things as we're doing, or we may not be super strategic, but I was willing to do that to get money and the car and the house and the title, and to feel like I was accepted by the dominant culture, to feel like I belonged. That was really important to me, regardless of how I got there.
I think it says a lot about you to be willing to reflect on that and admit that those are things you sacrifice, because that's a hard thing to do, is to come to grips with that. So I appreciate you sharing it. Shanna, what about you? What were your sacrifices?
My sacrifice was a little different. I would say my first son he wasn't a whoops, he was a wow, that was easy. We got pregnant right away. And so we were thinking we had more time, and we got pregnant. And I had a really tough pregnancy on my body physically, and he was born healthy. And when people are like, "Are you going to have another?" I started saying, "Well, I'm not there in my career yet," right? So I kind of said, "Well, one little one at home." I was working a ton at the time, 80 hours a week. And I was like, I don't have the capacity to have another baby, but I do want one eventually. So when we started to try again, it's not like I was working any less, but I know the biological clock ticks. So we went to try, and I actually couldn't keep a baby. I had lost one at 10 weeks, and I lost one at 14 weeks. And when it came down to it, the doctor was like, your body is not healthy enough to carry a baby right now. I was overworked, underslept, undernourished. My body never was able to recover from my tough pregnancy, because I just went right back into work and just kept pounding away. And so I decided to take a step back, and I actually accepted a job at Schwab, because I heard they have better work-life balance. So I took a job at Schwab, and kind of said, I'm going to reposition myself to have more balance in my life. And we tried for a third baby, and I lost that one at 10 weeks. And the doctor, we did a bunch of scans, we did all the tests, and basically my eggs were too old at that point. So I couldn't have any more kids. And the hard part about it is like Sumaya said, when you're doing these things, you don't really think about what you're doing. You're kind of focused on whatever that goal is, and you're not doing things like, I'm going to give up my second child to be, a VP. That's not like what's going through your head. But without taking that inventory of how you're doing, um, some of this stuff you can't go back. And I know people who have gotten divorced. I know people who have lost connections with their children, who have made decisions that they wish you could go back. And so I think what we want to get into today is, how do we take this and learn from it versus just keep doing what we're doing.
Yeah. That's such a powerful story. And I remember when we first chatted several weeks ago and you shared it, and I'm not going to put all men in a box. I'll speak for myself. Something I have never, ever, ever had to consider is, would I be able to have children at a certain age? And maybe it's something that I should have been considering, but obviously that's a burden that most men probably don't carry. I certainly didn't. So I'm also very appreciative of you sharing it, because that's not an easy thing to share. So you're teasing a little bit something we're going to get into in a little more depth, which is catalysts. But I want you to share a little bit with the audience how that whole experience changed the way you think about work.
Yeah, to be honest, it didn't all change at once. It wasn't like, you know, third miscarriage doctors, and then all of a sudden I was a new woman. It was, I realized that the next promotion that I got, which was to MD, which is kind of the top of the totem pole, that it wasn't as rewarding. And so I started to evaluate why I thought that. And it was because I wasn't doing work that I was really passionate about. And so I started to take the opportunity to do that. And so that while I was at work, I was actually really liking what I was doing. And so I started doing, I got a larger team that was multifunctional. And so I could have leaders of leaders. I could groom the next generation of leaders. I was doing a lot more coaching with my direct reports versus micromanaging. I was really working with other leaders to help them develop those skills to coach their direct reports. And it was so much more rewarding that I got to the point where I was like, I want to do this all the time. And so I left corporate, and that's what I do now, is coach. And but it took me 6 years to get to that decision point where I was like, this is what I want to do. But the catalyst really put the things into motion as to, what do I want to get out of working if I'm going to go to work.
So before we dig in a little bit more on catalysts, I think we want to bring the audience in for a poll, right? So Samaya, are you running our poll? Let's see if we can get that going. So what we want to hear from all of you is, talk about your own sacrifices. And if you want to speak to any of this, please just raise your hand. We'll bring you into the conversation. But go ahead and respond to the poll. Where have you sacrificed? And this is multiple choice. So you can select more than one if you like.
So a lot of people are saying,
Family.
yep, family
Mental
and
health. Oh man, yeah.
friends and social activities.
Yeah. Can we just say all of the above?
Should have put that as an option.
Yeah.
I find it interesting that we've got a pretty good chunk that are saying job fulfillment in this pursuit of success.
Yeah, that is interesting. Pursuing more success in my job is leaving me less fulfilled in my job.
Mm.
Yeah, interesting.
Maya, if you click end poll, everybody else can see the results.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There we go.
Okay. Can everyone see? Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, the top 3 are the most: family time, mental health, physical health. That says a lot, right? I think we wanted to open it up quickly to see if anyone wanted to actually share.
Yeah, any comments out there in the audience? We'll look for a raised hand.
No one wants to share on the phone with a bunch of strangers? Understood.
Hi, it's Kedra Norwood. I will share. So thank you all for the panel discussion and regarding the job fulfillment. Um, in that respect, I think I did appreciate what Shanna said about, hey, I started coaching and felt more fulfillment in that space, although I was an MD. I know for me, I'm kind of at that crux of, hey, I've had this educational background in law and jurisprudence, but I'm getting more fulfillment in identifying and tapping into the people aspect of it, or the people from an experience standpoint, and really helping to facilitate conversations that drive um, awareness and acceptance of marginalized communities. And the challenge that I'm facing is this internal structure, or struggle rather, where you've invested time, money, sacrificed everything into driving this path that you were given, that was quote unquote the normalized path to success, but you're at a point where your heart is pulling you somewhere different. Right. So I think my question is, for Shanna or anyone else on the panel, what has helped you along the way normalize that transition, or and not even just searching for a normal, but helped you to navigate being at that pivotal point in your career?
Yeah, we're actually gonna get into a little bit of that. Um, for me, it was my relationships with my community, my support. I mean, telling my husband that I was going to quit my job and cut our family income in half because we both earned the
Mhm.
same amount of money. Um, the initial conversation was a little rocky, and but he's very supportive of me doing what I want to do to be happy, and so we went through and together said, all right, what do we need to do to make this economically feasible?
Mhm.
And knowing that when you start a business, it's slow and it's that that hockey stick, right? You got to spend money to make money. So how could we do that? I had a lot of friends, Sumaya is one of them, who I would talk to and say, I'm scared. Like, she's done this before. She coached me
Mhm.
through what it was going to take to do it. I had a community that I could really go to, and even my network within the industry was very supportive because I'd coached them. And so
Mhm.
knowing that what I had done had impact on other people, and them encouraging me to do more of that was part of it. So we're going to talk a little bit about what areas we all need to be looking at, and your community is really one of them that can help you truly make courageous decisions and choices, um, if you reach out to them, right? Like, if I would
Yeah.
have done this in the vacuum, I probably never would have done it. If I had not told Samaya what I was thinking, if I had not told, my boss, what I was thinking, my boss's boss, I talked to him about it.
Mhm.
I really reached out to my community to support me, and they did. And so I think it's,
Mhm.
really important to think you're not in this alone. And there are people who can help you. So that was my secret to success, or secret
No,
to
thank
courage,
you.
I guess. We'll see
Yeah.
about the
Yeah.
success, but the courage nonetheless.
Yeah. That's the
And
first part. Thank you.
and spoiler alert, Kedra, we got a few other tips and tricks coming for you. So
Okay. I'm here for
beyond
it.
that, but the advisory group is definitely a big one for sure.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
good feedback. Um, Thanks for bringing your voice into the conversation, Kedra. In the interest of time, I want to make sure we move us along here, so we can get to the tips and tricks. But First, just want to kind of reiterate what I hope you all are taking from the conversation thus far, and it's that you got to kind of come up with your own definition of success. It's not what our culture says. It's not what somebody else says. It's what you think is success in your life. And this is a great quote from RuPaul. Secret of success in every field is redefining what success means to you. It can't be your parents' definition, the media's definition, or your neighbor's definition. Otherwise, success will never satisfy you. Well said. So what we want to encourage all of you to think about is how to find success in terms of balance. And the balance is in doing things that are fulfilling and that make you happy and that allow you to pursue goals. And doing all of those things is what really makes you successful. But the first step to getting there, and we teased this a little bit, but now we're going to dive into it, is to think about a catalyst. And so, Shanna, you shared your catalyst, the aha moment. Samaya, we haven't given you a chance to do so, so I want to hear about your catalyst.
Yeah, my catalyst was a hot mess. In 1 year, I had a divorce. I found out my child, who I knew was delayed, but they actually gave me the diagnosis of the R word, retarded. It was extremely painful. The proper word now is intellectual disability, but I did that. So all within a year, I got divorced. I found out my daughter had an intellectual disability. I was in a master's program. I bought a house. And I lost my health. I had an injury that didn't allow me to work. So in true overachiever, tone, I was like, oh, I can't work. Well, who the hell am I? Right? Like, this is my identity. How can I not work? I'm in a master's program. Like all these things that meant success to me just came crashing down. I could not type. I was sitting at a Ritz-Carlton, at a conference, and I literally hit my last keystroke and could not type anymore. And it took a lot of soul searching because I was panicked. I was a single mother. I was disabled. I had a disabled child. And I had to take into account, like, who was I? I went to a lot of therapy, and I'm grateful for that. But yeah, it kind of forced me to redefine what success meant. And that's when I kind of found DEI as a profession. So that's kind of what made me, being a disabled person, really made me think about how could I advocate for other people, as well as quit denying the parts of me that were important, which is I am a Black, I am a woman. How do I lean into that more? And how do I actually talk about it rather than hiding it?
It says a lot about you as a person to be able to overcome all of those things. It's pretty incredible. But yeah, I think everybody can see how that would be one heck of a catalyst. Mine's a little different, not quite as dramatic. But I remember I was middle stages of my career, thought I was on the right track, had been put into some roles where I was asked to lead some pretty significant projects, flying back and forth to headquarters all the time, meeting with, the top floor, all the executives up there. And I happened to be sitting on the runway in Denver on Halloween night, waiting for my flight to take off. And my wife was sending me pictures of my kids in their Halloween costumes. And they were 5 and 1 at the time. And hit me like a ton of bricks. You are in the wrong place right now. And so, catalysts take a lot of different forms. But so to all of you in the audience, if you haven't had it yet, be looking for it. Be a little bit more mindful that it's probably out there. For those of you that have had it, and maybe this conversation could be part of that, it's a good time to leverage it, to do something different. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. So step 1 is catalyst. Step 2 is realignment. It's time to take action. So back, Samaya, to you. talk about your realignment.
Yeah. So again, I decided to pursue DEI as a profession and kind of step into my own and into myself. I also don't believe people also say, find your passion and you'll have everything figured out. And I don't believe that. I believe we need people to clean toilets. We need people to pick up our trash. We need people to dry clean our clothing. Everyone in this society is important to how we live our lives. And I believe you can find passion in anything that you can do. Okay. So DEI happened to be a passion, but I've been passionate about most of my jobs. So when you're looking at realignment, I think the first thing is just being honest with yourself. And that's hard, right? So when my body failed me, I still was in denial. When I had a child with special needs, I was still in denial about what was possible for me and how I could go about doing it. So being honest with yourself is really important. Taking stock of what you're doing. So we do this at work all the time. Hey, it's we're going to work on our Q4 strategy or our 2024 strategy, and we do kind of the stop, start, continue. Who's doing start, start, continue in your life? What are you going to stop doing? What are you going to start doing? What are you going to continue doing? And that's what I had to do as well, is go through that from that perspective and willing to let things go, right? Because some of the things you have to let go are the things that are about status, right? Or money. And then what is the impact of those choices? And then most importantly, what we learned today, I don't know about y'all, but I was super surprised when I saw that success was being satisfactory. I have never wanted to be satisfactory in my entire life. Like, it makes me feel gross just thinking about being satisfactory. But leaning into that more and accepting that I don't have to be a superhero. I don't have to kill it every single time. Doing the minimum, being the M word, mediocre, is okay, because most of us are mediocre. But we're sold this like success and greatness and all the time. And I ate it up. So what does satisfactory look like for you? Like, literally, can you put on above your desk, how can I be more satisfactory? Mike?
Yeah, and you don't have to be great everywhere. There's some places where you have to be great. There's times when you have to be great. I have to be a great father. I believe that strongly all the time. I have to be a great husband. But there's times when, like, I tell my team this sometimes, I can do B+ work at times. That's okay. That's all right. It's good enough. Check the box, move on. Yeah. So the third thing after realignment is to acknowledge what's holding you back. And I think this is a great quote that really summarizes that, is that there's fears, right? All of us have different fears. One of those fears is, I'll admit, keeping up with the Joneses was a problem I had in the past. And this quote speaks directly to that. Comparison is the thief of joy. But there's a lot of other fears, right? Like, am I less valued in my family because I am not, bringing as much financial security to my family as I was before? Or am I letting somebody down? Or, there's a lot of different fears around this that I'd encourage all of you to think about. What are those fears? Identify them. Identify which ones really matter and which ones maybe you can set aside. And then if we move on one more slide, maybe this is a better way to think about our success, and it's strive not to be of a success, but rather be of value, right? Not what it's really about. So now that we've talked about our catalysts, realignment, the things that hold us back, Shanna, I think I'll hand it off to you here to talk us through some practical tips and tricks. What could this look like for everybody?
Yeah, so part of it is starting with, you have this catalyst and you have a reason to think about this, right? So something happens, you're like, I need to rethink, and maybe this session can be that. And what I recommend people do is take inventory of where you're spending your time, where you're spending your energy, and how that's rewarding you. And so I think of it like, life is like a basket of eggs. you get 12 eggs. You only have a certain amount of capacity as a human. And a lot of the times we're putting all of our eggs or most of our eggs in one basket, and then we're not actually getting satisfaction out of that basket. So I did this exercise, I filled it out. I was putting what I would call 90% of my eggs into my career and job, and my satisfactory rating was only like a 6. And I was like, well, what if I only put 5 eggs in that basket? Does it stay a 6? And so thinking about where you at that moment need to be moving your eggs. And sometimes you need a lot of your eggs in one basket, whether it be home or partner or romance or, health, but it's going to move on different circumstances. So kind of keeping this thought of where do I need to be focusing my energy and is it providing me satisfaction? So, let's start at work. Where do you want to be successful and what gives you fulfillment? And this is a little bit of what I alluded to earlier. Prioritize. I think it's really important at work to say, what is my goal at work? Is my goal to get promoted? That's going to have different activities and tasks that you need to do than is my goal to support my team better or to help my team be more productive. Because if you want to get promoted, handing out the pet of the month newsletter and signing up for that is not going to help that. If you want a leader brand, you might be better served to join the culture committee where there's other leaders on that team that can see you in a different light. So are your activities and your involvement supporting your goal? And making sure that you're spending the right amount of time to hit the goal you want. The other one is setting boundaries. COVID definitely taught us a lot about this, but I just don't think many of us are nailing it quite yet. So really establishing what are your boundaries with work? What are your work hours? And the bleeding from where I'm sitting right now into the next room needs some harder walls. And so I log off of my computer at the end of my workday. I say I work until 5. And I literally log off and shut the computer down because then it's a lot harder for me to come in and just like jump on real quick and like type an email because I'd have to log back in and wait for it to reboot. And so that's a way that I shut down. I also shut the door to my office and try not to use my office during the weekends. Communicating this to your team. What does it look like? What are my off hours? And letting them know that. So letting people know what your boundaries are. The second one is at home. And this is probably where many of us struggle is what is the intention you want for yourself, your partner, your children, your family at home? And really sitting down and defining what does this look like? What does success in parenting look like? And what actions do I need to do to create that? What does success look like with your partner? One example here is Brene Brown talks about as partners, you need to be 100%, but you don't need to be 50-50. So sometimes when I'm traveling at home, I need my husband to be 90, but I can still handle 10%, like pay this bill or register for that because I'm on the road, but I obviously can't take care of the rest and vice versa. So you don't need to be 50-50, but you do together need to find a way to be 100. And how do you take care of you? Sumaya mentioned this. What does success look like for you? I also talked about my physical health. She talked about her physical health and mental health. And then also remembering it's not just taking care of the physical being. What are you doing to continue to spark your interest in life? How do you think about continuing to learn? And then what can you outsource? This is the biggest one for me. Or what does not need to be done? Let's be honest, I hate laundry, so I used to outsource my laundry because it would suck the life out of me to sit there and do laundry. And I was like, I can do it cheaper and outsource it than it would take me to spend the time to do it. I'd rather be spending time with my kid on the weekend. So I was willing to pay for that outsource. Figuring out where you're willing to let go of the reins and let somebody else handle it. And then finally, of course, you have the community. And I'm going to turn this over to Sumaya to talk us a little bit through how to balance in the community.
Yes. So Harvard did a study that was 85 years long on what is the true point to happiness, and it is people. And I know you have some people right now in your life that get on your nerves. I answer my mother's call that every third time she calls. Love her, but can't always talk to her. But it's community, and it's hard to reconcile that. And I know a lot of my friends who've become even more reclusive after COVID, right? Or they're a little bit more having more anxiety around people. And it really is those deep relationships that help. So friends, family, neighbors, during the pandemic, I had only lived in Denver for 1 year and I didn't have a lot of friends. And luckily I was able to just get to know my neighbors because I was gone all the time. So, but instead I was home all the time. I got to know them. My neighbors and I trade vegetables because I met the ones who garden. We share food. They help me come and fix things at my house. And it makes me feel really connected to know my neighbors are looking out for me, especially because my daughter has special needs and sometimes she tries to escape. Coworkers, Mike and Shanna, both are my ex-coworkers, and we have found a reason to come together and like share experiences and perspectives from all 3 different perspectives, but find something in common. Volunteering is a really great way to do that. And then hobbies. So I mentioned I was a Latin dancer at 42. I realized I didn't have any hobbies. And when I tell you all that dancing is so healing to me, like I'm going to get emotional talking about it because it's physical touch. We cannot live without that. It's physical touch. It's exercise. I'm literally being held by strange men, sometimes women I meet on the dance floor. And it's dopamine kick. It's all the things. And it is literally saved my life in so many ways. But it's a community I belong to. I moved to Denver and there was an immediate community I just plugged right into. So, and then the last one is spirituality, right? So a lot of those of you who might be religious, this is finding people of the same ilk that you can come together with. But the most important thing is community. And I've been raving about this documentary that I watched, Living to 100. It's about all the blue zones. I highly recommend it. But that is the study of that as well. All these communities that are able to live to 100 have an awesome way of really connecting to their communities respectively. And then lastly is calling into action. So I hope you're learning some good nuggets and you're feeling good after this. But if you log off today and you just go back to having no boundaries, to chasing the dollar, to not pursuing your interests or taking a lower paying job that would make you a lot happier, then this time you spent wasn't well done. We recommend you start with one thing. So, really, or start with a couple things, but do a challenge with others. So community, there's so much data on how community and accountability helps us create accountability with each other. My accountability partner, Elaine Marino, is on this call, and we meet every Monday. And we talk about what we're going to accomplish for the week, but not just from a work perspective, from also taking care of ourselves. Are we eating right? And when I went through a really big depression episode, it was literally, she was like, can you take a shower? That's how bad things were, right? So having someone that supports you in whatever your endeavors is important. Also, finding accountability partner, getting some therapy or coaching. I understand that these cost money. So if you cannot do that, hopefully you have a really awesome friend who's good at it. But those are really pivotal in that first step of just being honest with yourself. I notice a lot of people project who they want to be instead of just being honest with your flaws, your weaknesses, like they're real. And then getting an advisory board. So also just getting the right people. I can't stress this more because I've given a lot of terrible advice in my life, especially when I was younger and not self-aware, is that not everybody is going to be on your vision with you, right? The person who's also driven and sees success as money, they're probably the wrong person to talk to about living a quieter, slower life where you're going to reduce your income. But maybe they're great at helping you drive towards the goal that you do want, right? So realize that not all your friends and family are going to support you in the ways that they can't, that you want them to, but they can support you in the ways that you think they can, if that makes sense. So it's also knowing that your limitations of your friends as well. And excuse me. And I think that's it. So just kind of getting all those things together and taking action on these things. Mike?
Okay, thanks, Samaya. And I see we're at the top of the hour, so I'm going to do rapid fire summarization. So think about whether or not you've found your catalyst. If you haven't, maybe this is it. Use that as an opportunity to take inventory of, as Shanna said, where are you putting your eggs? Are they in the right place? Are you out of balance? If not, think about realignment. And it's about work, home, and community all together. And then acknowledge that this is hard. Acknowledge that there's things that are going to scare you. And recognize which of those fears are important and which of them are not. And then find accountability. So Samaya talked about your personal advisory board. That's one way to do it. There's a lot of ways to do it, but find a way to hold yourself accountable to making some important changes in your life. And we think the end result is going to be finding a sense of fulfillment and happiness in your career and in your personal life as well. So let me close because Shanna and Samaya are far too humble and they would never plug themselves. So I'm going to plug them and say, if you've got an interest in working with them in continuing the conversation, here's their information. We'll make sure to get this deck out to everybody. And you're always welcome to reach out to the two of them or to me as well on LinkedIn. And we're always happy to connect and continue the dialogue. And thank you all for giving us an hour of your time.